May I click on the first? Okay. Your Excellency, Monsieur Olivier Richard, Chargé d'Affaires, delegate from Embassy of France, distinguished guests and colleagues. Today it is a great privilege to have Monsieur Olivier Richard, Chargé d'Affaires of the Embassy of France, to share with us his perspective on current and potential collaboration between Mahidol University and the Embassy of France. Mahidol University has a close relationship with the Embassy of France, and we are particularly grateful for their support in building collaboration with institutions and organizations in France, including the area of molecular bioscience and medical technology, as well as the possibility of exciting projects concerning viral vectors. Apart from the research project, we are interested to hear more about opportunities for mobility and exchange programs with French universities and how things will move forward under the new normal. We are also very happy to have Campus France in supporting the development of mobility opportunities for many years. Through these connections, we have a number of Mahidol University alumni who are now studying in France. Following this success, and right after this welcome address, we would like to share a video clip of these alumni discussing their experiences. So once again, I would like to express my sincere thanks to Monsieur Olivier Richard, Chargé d'Affaires of the Embassy of France, for joining us today and continuing to support collaborations between Thailand and France. Thank you.
หนึ่งนะครับเรื่องระบบการศึกษาครับสองคือเรื่องภาษาฝรั่งเศสและสามคือเรื่องการท่องเที่ยวครับสำหรับเรื่องที่หนึ่งนะฮะเรื่องระบบการศึกษาเนาะทีนี้ประเทศฝรั่งเศสเนี่ยมีหลักสูตรคือหลักสูตรอินเตอร์ก็คือเป็นหลักสูตรที่ทำการเรียนการสอนด้วยภาษาอังกฤษนะฮะแล้วก็ถ้าเกิดว่าเทียบค่าเทอมแล้วเนี่ยค่าหน่วยกินแล้วเนี่ยค่อนข้างมีราคาที่ถูกกว่านักศึกษาต่างชาติอย่างเราก็ยังสามารถใช้สวัสดิการในฐานะนักเรียนได้เช่นเดียวกับชาวฝรั่งเศสเลยต่อมาอันที่สองคือเรื่องภาษาครับก็ต้องยอมรับว่าภาษาที่เขาใช้กันในประเทศฝรั่งเศสเนี่ยก็คือภาษาฝรั่งเศสเนาะข้อดีของมันก็คือเมื่อเราจบกลับไปเนี่ยเราก็จะยังได้ความรู้ในภาษาที่สามที่ติดกลับไปด้วยนะครับข้อสุดท้ายฮะข้อเรื่องเกี่ยวกับการท่องเที่ยวครับเราสามารถเดินทางไปเที่ยวประเทศฝรั่งเศสไปยังประเทศใกล้เคียงในราคาที่ถูกแล้วก็เรามีวีซ่าอยู่แล้ววีซ่าเชงเก้นเราก็ใช้วีซ่าเดียวกันเพราะฉะนั้นเรื่องวีซ่าก็ไม่ต้องห่วงเรื่องสกุลเงินก็ใช้เงินยูโรเหมือนกันก็ไม่ต้องแลกเงินเหมือนไปต่างจังหวัดเท่านั้นเองแต่ว่าความจริงแล้วเราได้ไปอีกหนึ่งประเทศเลยนะฮะฝากไว้ประมาณนี้ฮะ3 ข้อที่เราควรไปเรียนที่ประเทศฝรั่งเศสครับ
ถ้าเกิดพูดตรงๆเลยนะครับจริงๆถือว่าแพงมากถ้าเทียบกับกรุงเทพแต่ว่าเรามีสามารถลดค่าใช้จ่ายได้อย่างเช่นค่าขนส่งสาธารณะเราสามารถซื้อตั๋วรายสัปดาห์หรือว่ารายเดือนได้ซึ่งอันนี้ช่วยลดค่าใช้จ่ายได้มากหรือถ้าเกิดเราอยู่ในปารีสเนี่ยเราสามารถซื้อจักรยานแล้วก็ใช้จักรยานเนี่ยปั่นรอบเมืองได้แล้วก็อีกสิ่งหนึ่งที่เราสามารถประหยัดได้ก็คือเรื่องอาหารถ้าเกิดเราทำอาหารได้เนี่ยโอ้มันจะช่วยประหยัดได้มาก
1. เตรียมตัวให้พร้อม 2. รู้ว่าขอความช่วยเหลือจากไหนเมื่อไหร่ยังไง 3. ก็คือเป็นคนที่มุ่งมั่นตั้งใจในสิ่งที่จะทำคิดว่าอันนี้เป็นข้อสรุปเบื้องต้นเกี่ยวกับประเทศฝรั่งเศสต
ต้องไม่กลัวเราต้องเป็นคนที่กล้าในการทำกล้าในการคุย
ก็เรามองหาทุนมันไม่ได้ยากมันไม่ได้ได้ยากอย่างทุนฟังโก้ไทยก็เป็นทุนของการบัตรฟ้าเองด้วย ก็ลองศึกษาข้อมูลดูแล้วก็ขอให้โชคดีนะ
ต้องแบบมีกำลังใจจริงๆแล้วก็อย่าท้อค่ะ
เพราะฉะนั้นสิ่งที่อยากฝากน้องก็คือว่าอย่าเป็นคนที่ตัดสินตัวเอง ถ้าอยากได้เดินฝ่าดงเดินบุกบั่นมุ่งมั่นและก้าวเข้ามา แล้วสุดท้ายคุณจะได้เจอสิ่งที่เป็นทองคำเป็นสิ่งที่มีความหมายรอคุณอยู่ช่องทางที่เป็นแหล่งข้อมูลที่น้องๆจะเข้าไปศึกษาข้อมูลเพิ่มเติม และเข้าไปปรึกษาได้ในเส้นทางที่เป็นขั้นบันไดเหล่านั้นเนี่ยจะไปทางไหน3ช่องทางทั้งหมด
สำหรับน้องๆมหิดลก่อนอยากหาข้อมูลก่อนเราเข้าไปคุยกับพี่ๆกองวิทยาสัมพันธ์ได้ที่มหาวิทยาลัยมหิดลเนาะอยู่ตึก OP สถาบันที่เขาให้คำแนะนำเกี่ยวกับการเรียนต่อต่างประเทศประเทศฝรั่งเศสอยู่แล้วก็คือการบัตรฟรานซ์เข้าไปเลยการบัตรฟรานซ์ไทยแลนด์เนาะเสิร์ชเว็บไซต์หรือว่าแฟนเพจใน Facebook ก็ได้พี่ๆเขาใจดีมากแล้วก็ให้ความช่วยเหลือดีมากสุดท้ายละตัวช่วยที่อาจจะทำให้ชีวิตน้องง่ายขึ้นในช่วงแรกเนาะก็คือตัวช่วยที่ชื่อว่าสมาคมนักเรียนไทยในประเทศฝรั่งเศสในพระบรมราชูปถัมภ์แล้วก็ในเว็บไซต์เนี่ยก็จะมีพี่ๆนักเรียนไทยนี่แหละช่วยกันเขียนคอนเทนต์ที่เป็นบทความเนาะอธิบายเรื่องราวต่างๆเช่นเปิดบัญชีทำยังไงติดต่อหอพักทำยังไงรวมไปถึงคอนเทนต์อื่นๆอีกมากมายที่น่าจะทำให้การมาฝรั่งเศสของน้องง่ายมากขึ้น
If you want to give any comments or your future collaborations to make, please.
Mr. President, Honorable Deans, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, thank you very much for welcoming me and my delegation this morning. Maybe I just have to explain why my ambassador, the new designated ambassador, couldn't make it. In terms of protocol, he hasn't had the opportunity yet to present his credential to His Majesty the King. So in terms of protocol, it would not have been correct that he meets the President this morning. So it should be done next month or at the end of this month normally. Let me first express my gratitude towards Mayol University on behalf of the French Embassy and my team for all the support that your university has been providing to the French Embassy for many years. I personally attended many events organized with your university. I'm referring to scientific cooperation, for instance, where your university and the embassy organized some conferences. And thanks to those conferences, new French partners have had the opportunity to be in touch with your university. There were also some screening of movies in 2018 and 2019 about atmospheric and plastic pollution with debates. It was before COVID problems, but I think it's still quite important today. We also have, cooperation in terms of scholarship. I think Professor Vichai is very important to us because it is part of our panel to select the students. We also have Campus France because your university is part of the tour organized everywhere by Campus France. Campus France is a kind of agency helping, Thai students to organize, to prepare their studies in France. And every year we have Campus France coming in Mayol University to present, to explain the opportunities in France. And this agency is in a process to digitalize now, its different tools of promotion because of COVID. And we all see today the consequences of COVID, which makes everything more difficult. So we will organize webinar, this kind of new tools to go on. We also have even some cooperation in the field of culture and French language. I attended a concert of classical music in the Prince Mayol Hall a few years ago. So just to say that our cooperation is very rich and we are very happy about it. I would like to congratulate University of Mayol as well because you're playing a big role for the training and the education of the elite of this country, and congratulations as well for the international reputation of your university, because your university is famous till France, at the other side of the planet. I would like just to explain a little bit because why France is so interested into Thailand. I mean, the regional context is quite promising. I don't know if you've heard about it, but France adopted an Indo-Pacific strategy in 2018 because France sees itself as a power in the Indo-Pacific region. You know that there's a French Polynesia, French New Caledonia, which are French territories in the Indo-Pacific area. And this is clearly a priority of the French government now to be more involved in the Indo-Pacific. In 2020 we had good news as well because we have a new partnership between France and ASEAN, development partnership. And we have a discussion now to have a roadmap to implement new projects with ASEAN. And also good news at the level of the EU, with EU and ASEAN being strategic partners from 2020. That's the reason why the French and Thai government decided to write a new roadmap, you know, to strengthen, to deepen our cooperation to achieve the sustainable development goals in many fields, biodiversity, food security, health, fight against pandemics, safe access to energy, supply chains, and so on. So we are in a process to adopt a new roadmap for 5 years with Thailand, and we hope that at the end of those 4 or 5 years, Thailand and France may become strategic partners as well. But today, I mean, I think the aim of our meeting is maybe to try to explore new avenues between France, between the French embassy and the University of Maidol. So with my colleagues, we have some ideas we would like to deepen with you, but we're also very open to your suggestions, new proposals. So first, I was referring to scholarships. I mean, we have many co-funded scholarship schemes with universities in Thailand, and we would like to explore if there would be a way to initiate this kind of co-funded scholarship scheme with University of Maidol. It would be a first point. The second point is about the very important vectorology platform. Thank you very much to University of Maidol because I know that you've been bringing 10 million of bahts to fund this platform. I can assure you that CNRS and ERD are very eager to start new joint projects with you in this framework. And for the French Embassy, we are ready as well to support any projects of mobility with you. So maybe there's a need of thinking over how we could proceed and maybe set up a steering committee with regular meetings, with a schedule, or maybe an MOU would be useful. The third point is about health in this context of COVID. So you know, like me, that COVID has a huge cost in terms of human health, economic consequences. And the real challenge now is to sort it out and maybe to prepare ourselves for the next pandemics. And from France, we are quite convinced that it's very important that health is looked at as a whole. I mean, integrating, human, animal, and environment health. This is what we call the One Health Nexus. So not studying separately animals, environment, human, and so on, but all together, setting bridges between those different fields to have a comprehensive solution. So that's the reason why we started the PRESOT initiative with Germany, which is about preventing, the emergence of zoonotic diseases. This is a new project because it was adopted in January 2021 at One Planet Summit in Paris. So we have 3 French research institutes being leaders in this initiative. So this is INRAE, IRD, and CIRAD, working with different research institutes all over the world. I think they're working in consultation with 10 of them, meaning that there's 1,000 researchers between this initiative in 50 countries on the 5 continents, and Thailand is part of those 50 countries. So at the French Embassy, we'd like to know if Mayval University would be ready to work more on this PRESOT initiative with us, which is quite new. So there's many avenues to explore. And the last point, which may be raised, this is, I know that Mayval University is the home of this new ASEAN Sustainable Development Studies and Dialogue Center, which has been created by Thailand in the framework of ASEAN during the chairmanship by Thailand of ASEAN. I've seen that this center has started working with Norway, Switzerland, UNESCO, so we're quite eager to have a project with this center as well. France is quite used to work with UNESCO, as a power of Indo-Pacific. France is a member of UNESCO. We organized recently 4 side events about atmospheric pollution, plastic pollution, health, climate change. So I think this is the right time for France and Thailand to work with this center. I know this is supported by MOFA, which is very eager that we put a project in our roadmap. So I don't want to be too long, so maybe I've been a little bit too long, but this is the main issues we've identified. Thank you again for inviting us today.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ambassador. I think France has a lot of things that we have to learn from France, and also we have former collaboration, especially in medical field, that we understand that Pasteur Institute is very prominent in developing such kind of vaccination, and also any technology concerning about the virologies. And to my opinion, I'm myself as a surgeon, orthopedic surgeon, that the telesurgeries has been established first in 2003, transatlantic cholecystectomy, telesurgeries. The operator is located at New York, and the patient is Strasbourg, and also supported by France Telecommunications, and also more than 10 companies support this project, so-called Operation Lindeberg. Telesurgery, first time in the world, 2003. Transatlantic telesurgeries. And this has been established first time in France, which is really a famous one. And why calling Operation Lindeberg is because of the first man who solo from New York to Paris, 36 hours by plane. The operation solo, so-called, he flied by the plane called Spirit of Missouri or something like that, to my knowledge. And they remember these operations and call the telesurgery as Operation Lindeberg, to name after Charles Lindeberg. This is very famous one. I think so. We have some of the being from Faculty of MedTech, and also many people.
Guillaume will have something to say first, right?
Anyone you would like to introduce your colleague or mention anything, please?
My colleague.
Okay, please.
My colleague prepared a presentation, more detailed presentation with a PowerPoint, so I think this is the right time, you maybe to make the presentation.
dear President, and dear Executive Deans, and ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. It's very appreciated to have this kind of unique opportunity actually to talk about and to give us some time to maybe to go into a general presentation, but eventually to in-depth discussion afterwards. As it was mentioned that by Olivier earlier, that we came from different parts of the embassy today, and so my presentation will focus, of course, on mostly about what the embassy is offering, but it's not exhaustive in a way, so it's maybe something that to consider as a starting point of discussion. And so, what I'd like to start with, and so my affiliation is at the embassy, is working for the Corporation and Cultural Development Service, and we have a boss. She's here today also. So I would like just to start with this slide. This slide, the objective here is you may have some more information about the people and the service to connect at the embassy, because it's depending on who you are, either from university or what's your objective. If you are a student, if you are a professor, if you are willing to identify some companies, SMEs, then there's different actually contact person or services. And so here I think at the embassy what we can see clearly, and thank you very much for this nice testimony of the alumni from Mahidol, that Campus France of course is hosted at the embassy, which is not the case in other parts of the world, in other embassies, so it's quite a chance for us to work closely together. But apart from that, there's also, of course, cultural events and possibility to organize many things with France and their representative in Thailand, the Alliance Française. And in the middle of this slide, you can see that, of course, there's also a nice situation in Thailand where you have some research organization, namely like IRD, but also CIRAT and IRASEC in social sciences, and also development agency. The head office is based here in Bangkok. So, and as I mentioned before, like contacting with business partner, we also have a representative for the business economic service here today. So let's say like from that, I will just go into the people and the service, which focus mostly on cooperation and culture. And I think with Mahidol it illustrates very well that there's multiple forms of cooperation. So in arts, in language, in science, and we can put projects, events behind these words. For arts, of course, Mahidol University and France has collaborated for years, and will collaborate also this year, and has plans for some events, of course, with the College of Music and Mahidol University. So that is very appreciated by colleagues also to have such a nice relationship. But language also, she's not here today, we also have of course someone who's in charge of the language, and work closely with, for example, MUIC, Mahidol University International College. And what I will talk mostly today is the last one, is a science that you are probably more familiar to. And I would like to reiterate the will of the embassy and the support we have from the French Ministry of Foreign Affairs to support and to continue to support in this very unique situation of COVID. This actually important part, which is actually supporting science, supporting higher education. And this is historically very strong, and it is also in the future and this year. It can be illustrated through this year that we have existing programs, and we'd like to consolidate also further action in the framework of these programs. So, as you know, and I won't go into details too much about that, but Mahidol is familiar with the French Nobel Prize. They have received and hosted the Nobel Prize of Medicine, the French Nobel Prize of Medicine, and chemistry recently, and also young, promising researchers. And it was very nice to see that in 2019, Marie-Laure has hosted the Tetrahedron Prize, which was given to Rafael Rodriguez, and it was organized by the Faculty of Science here. And from that, I can say that it's very clear that having this opportunity gives the good condition to start collaboration. And after that, actually, there were some projects and complementary projects that are submitted for through international schemes, IRN, for example, International Research Network from Thailand, but also for other types of schemes. And that was a new collaboration, if I'm not mistaken, with the Institut Curie in the frontier research between cancer research and chemistry. I think it's quite original, and it was very exciting to see that Marie-Laure is hosting and welcoming this idea of having some people. So in France, there's some people that are familiar with Thailand, and for us it's very important actually to promote that, or to make the condition for them to come to here, and eventually to have this possibility to organize common events. But as you are familiar with research, CNRS also is a very strong research body in France, and if we look at the production of publication, it's really, really evident that they play a very important role in the world. And there are today, currently, in Marie-Laure University, some researchers from CNRS, French researchers from CNRS. So for us, it's very important to interact, of course, with the researchers, individuals, but also with the institutional level from those countries. So this, also, I would like to add that France put a lot of effort in the capacity for the university in higher education to have a doctoral degree. If you look at the data on the bottom left-hand side of this slide, then you can see that almost half of the PhD degree, they are not from France, in France. And that today's, it was maybe not the situation a few years ago, but now it's very clear that for master degree and doctoral degree, actually France is the destination, regardless you speak French or not. So that's an important, actually, adaptation of France system in welcoming, of course, foreign students. So there are players, of course, in research. It's a complex system, mixing, of course, university, research bodies, engineering school, so it's quite specific in France, but there's multiple ways of collaborating, actually, with French partners. So again, from the French embassy, we can try to facilitate these links, either locally or internationally. So as I mentioned, and Olivier also had mentioned before, so we have agencies and operators working together at the embassy, and the role, and the main role for us, and the goal is really to achieve actually this collaboration effort, and to make it happen. Like, we promote higher education in Thailand, but we also advise students, organize some events here locally, prepare them if they are willing to go to France. But we also organize scientific events here in Thailand. As it was mentioned recently, it was organized with different partners. And in the panelists, you have, of course, French and Thai researchers working together. And to a larger scale, some people from the region. The idea is, of course, to multiply the possibilities to develop long-term relationships. So at the end of the day, that to structure this cooperation effort into an MOU, joint laboratory, is something that is very important for the French research centers. And so this is why we actually try to accompany this, to keep this momentum, to make it happen. So at the embassy itself, what we propose, and some of you are familiar with this, and I will try to be brief, but the focus is made for young researcher, let's say early stage researcher. So either students from postgraduate studies to staff from universities and students. So it is divided into 3 different types of programs, and they are for the first 2 for individuals and the last one for teams. And there's mutual exchange for the last one, the PhD SciAm, and I will go into I will share with you some new figures because we have measured the scientific impact of the PhD SciAm recently. So for this year, for example, as you can see, these 3 programs, they are yearly call, actually open for either, as I mentioned before, students, the Franco-Thai Scholarship Program in red color here, for Master and PhD. We are now in the selection process, but after that, and soon, the call will be open for the PhD SciAm, for project to be started next year, 2022. And we also have a very, I think, important and I would say convenient program for young researchers, because it's for researchers that just finish, or 5 years after their PhD, to have the ability to go abroad for a short period of time and to make co-publication, for example, international publication. So for the first one, I'd like to mention you that here on this slide, this program has a long history. I won't go into the details, but for the last 10 years, it's about 200 laureates which were actually supported through this program. And it is a program specifically bilateral. I mean, it's only for Thai citizens. So the competition is at the national level between universities. And it is a bottom-up program, if I can say like that. And if we look at the data for the fields of study for the last, not exactly 10 years, but you can see that it's open to any kind of subject and topics. It is not the criteria for us. The criteria is academic excellence first. So there's space for neglected fields, namely, for example, social science. We receive too few, actually, application in social sciences, but there's space for that. So I won't go into the details of the selection process, but just to give you an idea of the order of magnitude this year. Normally we receive 150 eligible applications, and out of this, at the end of July, we select actually 20 to 25 new scholarships every year. So this year, there's a kind of erosion, maybe due to COVID. I don't have the exact reason for that. But we follow the same process. And we are now in April, and we have selected 50 and interviewed 50 of the candidates that will be presented after this shortlisted, will be finalized to the committee. And of course, we wait for Mahidol to participate to the committee at the beginning of May. And then after this goes to July to prepare them before pursuing the study master or PhD in France. I'd like to say here that it's a very flexible program in terms of foundings. That it can be sandwich PhDs, it can be one-year degree, because it is quite flexible. So I mean, it's really important to interact with us if you have good students, or if we have identified some students, which is the case for this year, that may interest Mahidol University. We would be happy to have your consideration on this different selected students. So the second one, the Junior Fellowship Program. As I said, that it is a program, a specific one, that keeps specific. Intentionally, we keep it specific as a program, because we believe that it's a very important for early stage researcher, once they have their PhD, to become associate professor, for example, in university within the first 5 years of their career. They have the ability to go abroad, in France, in that case, in a laboratory, and to build of course, consolidate some research, but also to write publication and international co-publications. That's an important part, I think. I won't go into the success story too much into details, but just for the first one, the Dr. Jean Paul. It's a good example here that he has started his master in chemistry, green chemistry with University of Rennes, and they collaborate strongly with McGill University for years. And after that, of course, with this, he got some also opportunities and different opportunities. Let's say it's a kick-off for his career, I believe, to have access also to other types of foundings. And the combination of funding is something that we would like to maybe eventually discuss with you, or the combination of schemes. If you look at what the France offer, it's not only the French embassy. There's also a European level, but there's also CNRS or research schemes from research institutes to combine with, to support the mobility of students or staff. And the last one, the 2 years PhD SciEM. So as you can see, this is I would say it's a good example of a real joint program with conducted with MESI and universities, and where we actually select, but not us. Actually, it's a peer review process. It's in research very common, but it is a project. When you have projects, when you have identified a team in France, for example, and then you can build up a project, really a joint project for complementary research purpose to be conducted within 2 years. And then after, there's a joint steering committee after evaluation by peers to support 10 to eventually a little bit more project every year. And this is out of 35, 40 projects. So let's say the success rate for this is about 25%. For the two former ones, the Franco-Thai is more selective, and the second one, the junior fellowship, is equivalent to that, more or less. So I'd like to share with you something that we have conducted last year with the French Ministry of Higher Education, Science, Research, Innovation. We have made some surveys that also analysis of all the applications received for the last 10 years within the frame of the project, even more than 10 years. You can see on this slide that the total number of applications, about 500 at that time, that is quite, the distribution of thematics and topics is quite equivalent to the number of founded projects. I would say here, my main message here is like, according to this slide, there's no really bias in the selection process. So the distribution of thematics is quite equivalent between the applications and the founded projects. And who actually is part of it from the French side? As you can see here on this slide, that university and CNRS, only these two, they represent 66% actually of PE employers, and for laboratory authorities, let's say 60%, which is actually quite equivalent to the bilateral program that France supports around the world. So I'd like to share something also important, I think, information here, is the ministry has compared this PhD SciEM with the equivalent program, bilateral program around the world. And you can see on the red dots here is a PhD SciEM. And it gives you an idea on this slide that the distance to the mean. So the blue dots, they are all the bilateral programs in the world, and the red dot is a PhD SciEM. And so if we look at the mobility, actually for the PhD SciEM, we have to make maybe a little bit more effort on young researcher mobility, to focus on young researchers. And that's quite true from France to Thailand, rather than from Thailand to France. So we have to find the good balance in supporting young researcher mobility. Another thing I'd like to share here with you is about the continuation of collaboration. Is this program efficient enough to trigger something, to start collaboration? Apparently, according to this slide, the answer is yes, because the blue dots again, they are all the bilateral programs in the world. You can see on the right side that the PhD Siam actually has quite a good scores in promoting and accelerating or triggering, starting collaboration between two teams in France and Thailand. So in that way, we can compare and to see if it is efficient enough and what kind of effort we should put in adjusting this program to the target actually people. And so that's we got some recommendation for this new program that I'd like to share is to promote co-publications and encourage PI to increase the implication of young researchers, as I mentioned before, but also to encourage young PI, women researchers to apply, and eventually to think about a complementary program to add to this in order to complement this existing program. So I just give you some figures about this scientific impact analysis, but of course there's much more to share. If you like, it is possible that to share this link with you and the whole report if you are interested to see more about the efficiency of this bilateral mobility program. But there's also other ways to pursue research. So in Thailand or in France. So there's for the mobility of students from Thailand to France, which represent more or less 300 new students per year in France. And out of these, like 100 through scholarships. You have also other schemes that the French Embassy also is contributing to, maybe the Royal Golden Jubilee program. And also, there's also the Ep3 program last year, which is a very selective program. It's a world competition between students to be awarded, but last year, like 2 Thai students were selected through this Ep3 program. So it's very encouraging. And there's also other schemes. And I'd like to focus and to stress the fact that here in Thailand, we also have some, not only representative researchers from research organization, French research organization, permanent staff, or long missions. And that's maybe that can start with this, the collaboration. And that was the case for ILD, researcher hosted at Mahidol. And they have set up associated teams with ILD and Mahidol recently to 2019, if I'm not mistaken. And this will, of course, accelerate the possibility of collaborating on specific subjects. So there's other schemes supported by the research organization, but the idea is actually the same, is to build international research networks, to support teams, new teams, to elaborate new projects, and to be founded for that. And I'd like to mention also that Institut Pasteur is in the region, not in Thailand today, but in Malaysia and in Vietnam, for example. And we also have IRASEC here based in Thailand, and it's a regional research institute with many researchers from CNRS, for example, in social sciences. And so there's maybe something to look at if we would like to consolidate the social sciences cooperations. And CNRS, as I mentioned before, there's some researchers, and the regional office of CNRS, as you may know, is based in Singapore. We are in close contact, of course, with them. So how about the I wanted to mention this program because even with the new normal situation that was mentioned by the president, France continues to support this program strongly. It's a very important action of an opportunity that we have. But if we look at this framework, then we would like to mention two examples for the future. And I won't go into the details because it has been mentioned before, for the vectorology platform. And the second one, maybe to complement, because I was too long, I think, in the presentation, is about the One Health approach, as it was mentioned by Olivier previously, that we have identified that we are supported, France is supported in the region, even supporting through a new project on One Health initiatives in the region, but there's also existing coordination network in Thailand with some objectives from 2025. And if I'm not mistaken, Marigo is also a part of this network. So we'd like to see and to investigate how is it possible to interact. And at the faculty, for example, of tropical medicine here today, there's a key researcher, French researcher, working on these aspects. So I would say that we have a good people and network and to start looking at this collaboration. So with this, I'd like to thank you, and just to say that there's a new call, and it will be the deadline for application will be closed at the beginning of May, which is called MOCA, Make Our Planet Great Again, launched by President Macron before, and it's a specific call on COVID for postgraduate studies in France. Thank you very much, and don't hesitate to contact them. Happy to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you.